都这样想要我怎么不听？你不着急啊？管人们什么家属呢
？Our thoughts and prayers are with the bereaved families affected.
These movements are consistent with deliberate action by someone on the plane.
The operation has entered a new phase. The search was already a highly complex multinational effort. It has now become even more difficult.
My emotion is going through a roller coaster ride.
In the early hours of Saturday the 8th of March, Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 vanished into the night. An hour into its journey came 4 words from the flight deck. OK, received, good night. And with that, it was gone. This programme will look back at the search so far and how it has expanded to cover 1/10 of the world's surface. We will also examine what we know about the pilots and the passengers on board and explore the theories of what might have happened to this plane on what should have been a routine flight from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing. Rescue teams from 25 countries are now involved in the search for the missing plane. Dozens of aircraft and ships are scouring the ocean for a sign, a clue, anything.
How difficult is your task?
Very difficult, and wherever we never give up, we try to search.
The operation initially centred around the last known location of the aircraft. Flight MH370 took off from Kuala Lumpur Airport bound for Beijing on Saturday the 8th of March at 12:41 a.m. local time. The last transmission from the plane's onboard communication system, ACARS, was previously said to be at 7 minutes past 1. We've now learnt that it could have been switched off up to 30 minutes later. It has also been revealed that the last verbal contact from the plane to air traffic control was at 19 minutes past 1, 11 minutes earlier than previously said. And it has emerged for the first time as well that the last words from the cockpit were spoken by the co-pilot before the plane's transponder, which tracks it, was turned off. At 1:30 a.m, air traffic control in Kuala Lumpur spoke to the flight deck. We've handed you over to Ho Chi Minh Air Traffic Control was the message. OK, received, good night was the reply. It was the last anyone heard of them. An oil slick aroused interest early in the investigation, but was then dismissed. It had nothing to do with the plane. So too, some floating debris, a door perhaps. Not so on closer inspection. And in another twist of possible hope, satellite images appeared to show smoke rising from the ocean south of Vietnam. But like so many leads in this investigation, it was quickly dashed.
Usual telltale from any airplane that crashes into the sea, the one thing that immediately floats are seat cushions. You know, they're not tied down. They will, if the hull breaks up, seat cushions will be floating everywhere. That's been a trademark of aircraft crashing into the sea.
Whatever the fate of flight MH370, the pilots will have played some role. 53-year-old Zahari Ahmed Shah was the captain that evening. He is a vastly experienced pilot with more than 18,500 flying hours under his belt.
He was a volunteer in the community program that I organised.
At the end of the program, there was this guy helping to stack chairs to clean up that place. And not having met him before, I asked, who is this man? And I was told he works for Malasian Airlines. I went to say thank you to him, and he introduced himself, giving me his name card. And when I saw he was a captain of a 777, you know, that's the kind of humble person that Captain Zaharie is.
The first officer was Farik Abdul Hamid. He's 27 years old and joined Malaysia Airlines in 2007. He was fairly new to this model of aircraft, a Boeing 777-200. CCTV shows the two men going through security on their way to board the flight that evening. We are told they did not specifically request to fly together that night. Police have started searching their homes, talking to friends and neighbours. This is Captain Zaharie's house. On a smart compound on the outskirts of Kuala Lumpur. His maid looks out of the door. They found this simulator in Captain Zaharie's house. The data on it is now being analysed for clues.
As a friend, my emotion is going through what I call a roller coaster ride. When you hear of a potential answer, a positive answer, it goes up, and then there's no, it goes back down, and goes up and goes down. And yeah, it's difficult. And I can just sympathize with the families of the people involved now, because they must be going through much more difficult times.
The longer the search goes on, theories that might have been initially dismissed as outlandish are now being treated as credible. Every day, the authorities brief the waiting families on the latest in the investigation. But with no sign of the plane, the grief is becoming unbearable. Emotions are running high.
They've been avoiding their responsibilities and talking nonsense. There are a lot of contradictory answers to our questions. That makes us very angry. I'm angry that the Malaysians don't tell the truth. They lie to the whole world. I'm totally frustrated about this. Where is my son? Even taxis have GPS. They can be found if they are lost or stolen. It's a huge plane, so high-tech and so advanced. How could it not be found? It's a joke.
Splits start emerging within the search operation too.
We are facing difficulties because the location where the Malaysian plane lost contact was inaccurate, our search operations lack reliable bases and are untargeted. There is excessive information from various channels. 1 minute something is found, the next it's denied. This kind of false news is too much and has greatly affected our decisions.
And then, finally, some news. A press conference is called. In Beijing, the families prepared to watch it, nervously, expectantly. A week to the day that flight MH370 went missing, with speculation running wild and desperation growing, the Malaysian Prime Minister Najib Razak reveals to the world major new developments.
We can say with a high degree of certainty that the aircraft communications addressing and reporting system, or ACUS, was disabled just before the aircraft reached the east coast of Peninsular Malaysia. Shortly afterwards, near the border between Malaysia and Vietnamese air traffic control, the aircraft's transponder was switched off. It then flew in a westerly direction back over peninsular Malaysia before turning northwest. Up until the point at which it left military primary radar coverage, these movements are consistent with deliberate action by someone on the plane.
The search of the South China Sea is now over, but rescue teams face the prospect of a new area, which is much bigger, much harder.
According to the new data, the last confirmed communication between the plane and the satellite was at 8:11 a.m. Malaysian time on Saturday, 8th of March. The investigation team is making further calculations which will indicate how far the aircraft may have flown after the last point of contact. This will help us to refine the search.
This has now become a criminal investigation. But is it a murder inquiry? For the first time since the plane went missing, the prospect that it has landed somewhere has become a genuine possibility. Next, who else was on board the flight? Might the passenger manifest hold the answers to so many questions?
My emotion is going through a roller coaster ride.
These movements are consistent with deliberate action by someone on the plane.
What happened to Malaysia Airlines MH370 has continued to baffle the world. Rescue teams are searching an area more than 10 million square miles. But the task they face is daunting. Within that vast space, they are looking for an object which, even in one piece, is only 63 meters long, a Boeing 777 airliner. This program has examined the search so far and the identity of the two pilots flying the aircraft that day. Now look at the other people on board, the passengers, and the question that everybody wants an answer to: what might have happened to this fateful flight? Could the flight manifest hold the answers? Investigators are scrutinising every name on it, but remarkably, they've admitted that they still haven't received details for each passenger after all this time. So what do we really know about the 227 passengers on board? Who might have cause to hijack an airliner? Who indeed has the knowledge? 15 different nationalities were flying to Beijing that night. Among them, 153 from China, 38 from Malaysia, 5 Indians, 4 French, 3 Americans, and 2 Iranians on board who became initial suspects but seem, for the moment at least, to have been ruled out. A Texas-based company, Freescale Semiconductor, had 20 employees on board. They are now missing.
Passenger manifest is obviously very important. It enables you to identify all the persons that are on board the aircraft, and that obviously is important for the security of the aircraft.
Early in the investigation, 2 names stood out. An Austrian called Christian Kozel, the other an Italian, Luigi Moraldi. They shouldn't have been listed. They weren't on board. Their passports had been stolen in Thailand. It would appear they were then used by these 2 men, Puri Noor Mohammadi and Delavar Saeed Mohammed Reza, Iranians trying to claim asylum in Europe. They have no known links to terrorism, though.
We know that once these two individuals arrived in Kuala Lumpur on the 28th of February, they boarded Flight 370 using different identities.
Salmat bin Omar has been waiting at a Kuala Lumpur hotel for any news. His son was on board the plane. He is an aviation engineer and was on his way to Beijing to repair private jets. Because he obviously has knowledge of aircraft, he is also now under suspicion.
Di peringkat awal, berita yang diterima.
When the news came about, it broke my heart because the aircraft was lost. It didn't fall, it didn't crash, it just disappeared.
Saya memang faham.
Yes, I understand, and we do hope that the investigators do investigate. In my opinion, all I know is that my son is an engineer for private jets and not huge Boeing planes.
Let's recap the plane's last known movements. Flight MH370 took off from Kuala Lumpur Airport for Beijing on Saturday the 8th of March at 12:41 a.m. local time. The last transmission from the plane's onboard communication system, ACARS, was previously said to be at 7 minutes past 1. We're now told, though, it could have been switched off up to 30 minutes later. It has also been revealed that the last verbal contact from the plane to air traffic control was at 19 minutes past 1, 11 minutes earlier than previously said. It has emerged for the first time as well that the last words from the cockpit were spoken by the co-pilot before the plane's transponder, which tracks it, was turned off. The next known location for the airliner came after it turned west. It was picked up on military radar over the Andaman Sea. After that, its location is unknown, but we do know that a satellite received a signal from the plane at 11 minutes past 8 in the morning from a distance that puts it in one of 2 flight corridors. According to new information, investigators believe that if the plane flew along the northern corridor, it would have reached from Laos to the Caspian Sea, depending on how fast it was flying. To the south, the search spans from Sumatra in Indonesia to the southern Indian Ocean, some of the deepest waters on Earth. We also know that the plane had enough fuel to fly for around 5 hours after it was last seen on radar off Malaysia. Depending on the altitude it was flying, that would mean it could have travelled anywhere within this range. It leaves a likely search area covering a huge swathe of the globe.
There's going to be some systematic searching by military reconnaissance aircraft, which, quite frankly, will be the best systems available. Much of the space technology is not necessarily directed at the area that the aircraft is believed to have gone down. And it's not necessarily going to be the right kind of space-based surveillance system to pick up the kind of debris or clues to the existence of a crashed aircraft. So I think it will rely very much on the numbers of maritime reconnaissance aircraft that are now flocking to help the Malaysians with their search.
Based on the data we know, it has been calculated that the plane could have landed at one of 634 runways in 26 countries across the region, if, that is, it was capable of doing so. But India, Pakistan, Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan have said they didn't detect any suspicious aircraft movement in their airspace. The Malaysian Prime Minister has confirmed the ACARS system was probably disabled. But what does that mean? Aircraft Communications Addressing and Reporting System, or ACARS for short, is a computer which sends constant updates to the ground about the health of a plane. It will first try to communicate over radio frequencies before choosing to send signals back via a satellite network called SATCOM. Pilots can choose to request data and to send it. The system will also send automated messages throughout the flight. For these systems to be active, airlines have to pay for companies to run them. But the systems are built into all aircraft. So just because you don't pay for the service, it doesn't mean it won't try to transmit data. It is very easy for someone to pull the circuit breaker on the plane's transponder, which sends electronic replies to the ground when it receives a radio signal. They could also do the same on the ACAR system. But despite all this, the SATCOM antenna will still automatically ping away, trying to find a satellite to log on to. As long as there is hope, the search will go on. That is the promise of the Chinese premier, no less. But even with all the resources that the superpower is dedicating to the cause, the fate of the Malaysia Airlines flight remains unknown. The families wait, longing for any small sign, a clue, a marker, anything. In the dark of a calm Kuala Lumpur night, MH370 took off on a routine flight north. An hour later, it vanished in what must be the greatest aviation mystery of recent times.